down from the vote.
Yeah, I'm gonna take more time too. We don't need to.
You don't need to belabor the day, but no, it's just, it's information. It's basically the working document for staff.
Okay. All right.
No, I would have a hard
Question
time
I read
saying
through, I said,
that
well,
was
how's
a
that
real
really gonna work?
conflict, but if you don't, it's really up to
Costs us money and not really something we asked for,
you
those
don't
kind
feel
of questions.
comfortable.
Yeah, that's why I had Victoria print that out. Oh, I want a
No,
couple.
no, no, you're
It's the good kind, too.
Oh, good. I
say
just
due to my
cup over
due to my
ACS.
relationship,
It was so strong I had to use a spoon to eat it.
Okay.
Well, it's bad when you put
but it's not
put
a
the spoon in
job
to stir up the sugar and it
Just
stands up.
Yeah. This is the same kind that you drink at the
Tired not to eat chocolate with it to make it
Well, of
palatable.
course. I mean, of course you do.
Of course you did.
most,
You got my answer.
most city employees
Okay, it's time to start, guys.
No, real quick, I'll be right
doing stuff, other things,
Time to start.
which is good.
I'm confused.
What's that?
Get away.
Oh, never mind. There was another
No,
one
I,
a while ago.
I don't think
They
she
changed it.
fits it.
Evidently, they ranked them, but they didn't
Yeah.
choose one.
And then the son's husband left.
What we're gonna do is we'll let them present and then we'll make our
So I
decision
don't
on
think she wants to
Thursday.
be home right now.
I nominate. Hold on, Joe. For a second.
That on consent?
If we get 4 votes, if we don't get 4 votes, we'll go down to the next one, I guess.
We will.
Well, I used the recycling center this weekend.
I use it all the time.
I don't have stuff to recycle, or I would.
Because it's on consent, we probably don't want to
Well, obviously, we're not following
step
instructions.
down from the entire vote on all the consent
yeah.
items, so
How you been?
Miss Humphrey?
gonna need to pull that off the consent
I'm
agenda.
good.
Christina been
No, her husband's
Mention
here.
that, Sarah will
here?
just,
She did say that.
should be handled by a separate.
Kind of neat, different, you know. People in
Good afternoon. I call the work session for the Sierra Vista City Council for September 24th to order. Today we have a number of things we need to do to prepare for the council meeting, as well as a couple of presentations. So we'll start with the September 26th council meeting agenda. And I'll mention that Ms. Wolf did call in and says she would not be here either today or on Thursday. So everybody who's here is expected to be here. The first item is item A is the 26th September council meeting. And of course, we'll start at 5 o'clock with the invocation of the prayer, pledge of allegiance. No awards presentation scheduled at this time. And we have the city manager's report. City manager, is there anything in your report that you want to discuss now?
No, I don't think, Mayor, there's anything.
When we go to item 2 is the consent agenda. There's approval of the regular city council meeting minutes for September 12th, 2019. After review, do you see any additions, corrections, deletions that we need to make to the minutes of September 12th? Okay. Item 2.2 is the special meeting in which we performed the evaluation for the city manager on September 17th, 2019. Any additions, corrections, completion, or comments for those minutes? Okay. We have a resolution for the acceptance of the resignation of Linda Nichols with regret and appointing Debbie Perkinson to the Employee Benefit Trust with term to expire in December 2001. Any comments, questions on that appointment? Okay. And then we have an appointment to Jennifer Doris for the Arts and Humanities Commission. Any comments on that?
She is confirmed to attend.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
On item 2.3.
Okay.
Yes, I was just asking Chuck whether or not it would be appropriate for me to abstain from that vote, because I have a personal relationship with Debbie.
Well, the question really is, will your personal relationship interfere with her ability to do her job or your ability to do your job?
No,
And there's not a financial tie-in?
no, we're just former coworkers, but,
Yeah, so I think,
and
well, the thing is,
close
that
friends. but-
if I had to excuse myself from every vote were people that I knew, I would never be voting on any of these.
Okay, I just want to make
So,
sure if there's any kind
again,
of,
it
if
is-
there's a need there.
If there's a financial arrangement or anything that would impede your ability to make a fair decision, then you probably need to consider that. But if it's not, then you're good to go. There shouldn't be any issue
Okay,
in my mind.
okay.
And if you're more concerned about that, I would recommend that you sit down and talk to the city attorney, and I think he'll probably tell you the same thing.
He's not here.
I don't feel there would be.
Yeah, I don't either. But that's who would
Okay.
give you the readout is the city
I just
attorney.
want to make sure.
Well, it's better to be too
Crossing it.
careful than not careful enough. That's no
Okay.
doubt about that. Okay, tabled items. We have a tabled item on refuse services. My understanding is the staff is not ready to do a presentation today on some recommendations for changes to what was presented last time.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we're recommending that it stay on the table for a couple of reasons. One, Ms. Wolf requested that she be here for that discussion. And second, we are working on an alternative proposal for fees, and we're penciling that out right now. That should be ready for your next work session, and you should be able to pull it off the table at that time. But I think we have a proposal that may work a little better for us, so.
Okay, so unless somebody wants to pull the item on this week, what I would do is we go to item number 3, and I will ask the question, is there anybody that would like to remove this item from the table? And after a period of silence, I say no one has requested to move the item off the table, and we'll go on to item number 4. In 2 weeks, well, if there's somebody that wants to discuss something on that this week, then you bring the item off the table, it's seconded, we do the discussion, and then I will ask, is there a motion for approval? And whoever wants to table again would have to come up and say, I move to have the item tabled and come back at the next work session. Because when you table an item, you need to say, the two pieces of information is, one is you want it tabled, and the other is at what point in time do you want it brought back to the council for consideration.
But we can untable it just to have
And you
discussion.
can, if you so desire to do that, if you have a second, we can discuss it, and then we can go on. But again, I'm not sure there'll be enough additional information to actually have a meaningful discussion on Thursday. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that's the way it works. Okay, ready to go to item 4? Resolution authorization of the Governor's Office of Highway Safety grant funding, and I don't have a note as to who that is here.
That would be me, Mr. Mayor.
That's you, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
cover
Mayor.
me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The item before you is an acceptance of a grant from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety to enhance DUI and impaired driving enforcement. These are the grants that we use to participate in the Southeastern Arizona DUI Task Force deployments. The item pays for overtime and 40% of employee-related expenses for the officers that participate in the DUI deployments. In addition, it also pays for the officers that represent law enforcement at the MAD Impact panels. The MAD Impact panels are for those individuals that have been arrested for DUI. They go to this MAD Impact panel as part of their sentencing, and our officers participate in that as well. So the grant amount is in the amount of $21,429 for overtime, and then 40%, $8,571 to pay for employee-related expenses. So our ability to participate in those task force is we can only participate with off-duty officers working the overtime due to our call load requirements for on-duty officers.
So the 40%, that includes the share for their retirement system?
It doesn't cover all of it.
Well, it covers 40%.
It covers
Right.
40% of all ERE, which includes also all the other, workman's comp and
All the other
things too. It
benefits.
doesn't cover all of it, but it does cover a portion.
So there is a cost to the city in
in the future.
in the future for the 60% that's not paid for by the state.
Right, and it's actually, so I believe our ERE with the PS PRS is about 75% or 70 to 75% of what the officer's actual salary is. So it pays 40% of that, the total ERE, which is around 70, I believe, with the PS PRS.
Okay, the reason I asked that question, I just want to make sure the council understands that we are, when we approve this, we are considering some money coming out of our budget to do things, although it won't go back to the officers until sometime in the future with the retirement system.
Right.
But there is a cost that we're accepting. And then guys like me, I believe, to keep a drunk off the road is probably worth the cost. But that's the other question you need to think about.
I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Any other questions for the chief on this item?
So can you kind of go over how has it always worked out that way, that they cover 40% and we cover 60% of costs? Is that how it's been all
Well, so they
along?
cover 40% of the ERE, but they pay the full overtime. They pay the overtime rate, and then the ERE that goes along with that extra is what they pay 40% of that, of the ERE. So that's how it's always been, as far as I know, from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety when it pays for the overtime. So they pay for basically all the hours to the officer regarding, well, they reimburse the city for it.
Well,
It's
the
paid overtime.
other thing you got to realize is we're not taking these officers and having them enforce something in Tucson or Phoenix. They're in the local area, and they're it may be south of town, in town, west of town, east of town, whatever. But it's in the general area that they should be servicing anywhere with DUI.
They will periodically, as part of the task force, go to Wilcox or Douglas, but that we have 13 deployments with the task force during the year. 9 of them are in the Sierra area. The rest will be throughout the county.
How many officers is it?
So we typically assign 2 to 3 officers per task force, which are the saturation patrols that they deploy on.
Okay. But it's focused on the local roads is my point, not doing the state highway.
And what would happen if we didn't do this?
We would not be able to participate in the task force. Our only ability is to do it on overtime because the guys that are assigned to the shift have the responsibility for service. These officers, their sole responsibility is DUI, impaired driving enforcement during the time that they are deployed with the task force.
They do it at normally high traffic, or I shouldn't say high levels of DUIs, like around holidays and those kind of
Right.
things. In the time of night and the location.
So would that mean that
That enhances
without
for-
our officers, would be fewer?
There would be. We typically put 2 to 3 out. The other agencies will put 2 to 3 out depending on their size. They may put 1 out. And not all the agencies in the county are part of the task force either. Not all of them receive money from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. We've received money for the past 25 years to do DUI enforcement. We've also in the past received money for them for equipment as well. A DUI van, intoxilizers, those type of things have been paid for by the Governor's Office for DUI enforcement because we're part of the task force.
And without being a part of the task force, those things would not be for.
That's correct.
But we'd still do, your officers that are already on patrol still patrol for DUIs.
They do when they are not handling calls for service. So just to kind of give you the numbers where we're at, we last year we had 246 DUI arrests. This year to date so far we have 182. We average about 22 a month. So we're actually looking at exceeding next year's numbers on our DUI enforcement. So there appear to be, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen in the last few years, more DUI drivers on the road at this moment. And that includes narcotics as well,
That's the
includes
problem.
drugs.
The need is not going away.
Is there any, I don't know what that would be, but is there any efforts from that same money towards prevention?
Absolutely. I mean, part of the Know Your Limit that we did at the city park is part of this is paid for through overtime through that as part of the task force. Those type of things come through that. We do the impact panels are part of that to try to. These are ones that have been caught, but we also are a part of all the public service campaigns that come through the task force to try to get people to stop drinking and driving.
Is there a way, when the quarterly report's submitted to the governor's office, is there a way we can get a copy in our read file?
We can do that for you.
That way we can, I mean, at least stand behind, hey, this is where that 30,000, by taking on that additional expense, this is where it's going, what we're actually doing for the city. No?
Are we this is a
This is something that we've been doing for 25 years, so it's part of the budget, the overtime budget, you know, to deal with this.
We can put it in the executive report as well.
Absolutely.
Actually, I think right now, I remember seeing something come out in the press or coming out through Adam on every time you do these, and it goes in the read file too, so.
Right, and those are required actually as part of the grant to do those PSA announcements about the deployments and stuff, and that's part of that campaign to try to prevent it from continuing to happen.
Incentive to
Right.
designate a driver.
Exactly. Okay. Any other further discussion on this? Chief, you got anything else to conclude?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. The next item is the Arts and Humanities selection of a design for a mural in the city, and we'll have a presentation very shortly about that, so we can talk more about that as we get down to item C on today's agenda. Okay. Any other questions about the meeting on Thursday? Discussion, pending the art selection? Okay. Then we'll go to item B, which is the strategic plan implementation plan. And Ms. Yarborough, you can handle this one, excuse me.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the implementation plan is the next step in the process after your approval of the strategic plan earlier this year. And it's the first step in staff's work on the strategic plan that we're sharing with you. And so the implementation plans are meant to tell you, now that council has set the overall goals for the strategic plan, how staff plan to go at the process to achieve the action items which will ultimately achieve the goals that council has set. In many cases, staff need to spend some time researching and analyzing to determine possible solutions. And so you'll see some common language across a number of action items like identify, research, evaluation, or reference to phases. I've pulled out some highlights to share with you and go over. It's by no means a comprehensive review of the plan, and of course, there's plenty of time for council to ask any questions that you have about specific implementation plans afterwards. So some of the highlights I pulled out under the engage focus area and the public engagement strategies. We heard concerns from council about the website, including ADA compliance and compatibility. So communications and marketing staff will be going through an evaluation process on the website and working with the city clerk's office to review ADA incompatibility and find and implement some tools to make the website more accessible. And that information will also be shared with the Commission on Disability Issues as they go along. Communications and marketing staff will also evaluate online engagement tools and plan to implement one after one's selected, after we define what measurable feedback from that tool should look like, and then which tool can best provide that measurable feedback. In the enhanced focus area, you'll recognize a carryover project from the last strategic plan for the EMS substation. The location was selected in the last strategic plan, and now staff are working through the steps to select the type of building, develop a site plan for the site at the corner of 7th Street and Buffalo Soldier Trail, and apply to BLM for a change to the land patent since the use of that land was originally supposed to be recreational use. We've had that talk with BLM already, and they've preliminarily indicated that the use is still compatible, so we just need to go through the process. And we would expect approval from BLM for that change, hopefully next spring, and then would plan to include that project in next fiscal year's budget. Another carryover project from the previous plan is the Fry Boulevard and North Garden Improvement Project, and that design project was just launched with the consultant EPS Group last week, and it's expected to wrap up next year, and that's the design process. Construction of the first phase of that improvement project would be tentatively planned for spring 2021. The Economic Development Team will begin evaluating the need and interest in space for small startups with the intent to develop a program in an underutilized area if the need and interest is there. If it's there, the next step is then to determine how the city can best help those businesses through the establishment of an incubator and what that incubator might look like. And business incubation appears again under the next focus area, Empower, where the economic development staff will work with various partners like the Chambers of Commerce, the EDF, and the SBDC to explore the possibility of a virtual incubator. Also under the Empower focus area, staff explained in detail about the process they'll use to develop a report for council that explains the extent of homelessness, mental health, and affordable housing issues in Sierra Vista, how those issues are currently being addressed, and how the city might further efforts to address those various situations. Identifying partnerships will begin with the Regional Continuum of Care, Good Neighbor Alliance, and SEGO, and move on from there. Under the Enjoy focus area, I wanted to highlight how staff will be considering how the Rothery Center land can complement and add to the use of Veterans Park and its many amenities. So they'll be looking at needs and priorities for the combined space, developing a plan to make that area a seamless recreational park area for the community, and the possibility of the city acquiring the Rothery land in the future. So then the next steps after today, we'll get to work, and council can expect formal updates every 6 months at your work session. The first formal update will happen in January, and then regular updates will occur in the executive report on various items that the departments are working on. And now myself and staff who are here are welcome to answer any other specific questions on the implementation plan as a whole.
Questions?
I had a comment.
Sure.
I just just a quick comment under Empower Goal 1. I'm gonna forget, it is page. I didn't write the page number down in my notes.
Page 10.
Oh, thank you. I just hadn't seen that, I guess, on previous look that we like specifically mentioned by name the consultant. Is that normal? I mean, because this is for 2 years, it could change. Could it not change? Or
What's our contract with Kelly Dry, the length?
Only dry.
It's an annual contract.
It's an annual contract, unless, like the last time we had a consultant, that consultant was actually selected to work for the administration in the Pentagon, so we lost that particular consultant. I wouldn't anticipate that would happen with this particular consultant, so.
well, this doesn't. I don't know. This doesn't lock us in with somebody or anything.
No,
Okay.
I would not do that.
That's all I thought. Gosh, we're mentioning them by name. That seems.
The only thing that locks us in is actually doing a contract, and that would occur, of course, for funding, and the budget would come before us.
Okay. The other was, this is just my own, for my own, future thoughts on how we use this funding, was in goal 2. I'd liked, of the, I think it's under enhanced too, right? Okay. Yeah, this is, something I've talked about a lot, so I know Matt's heard too much from me on this topic. Just a thought to tie goal 2 to the enhanced goal to item 2.3, where we say that we'll use CDBG funding for ADA and sidewalk improvements, and a lot of our CDBG funding for this year cycle is focused on that, which is, they're all needed improvements. But in the report and the data that we were given, we identified that lack of affordable low-income rental housing was a huge issue here. And one of the, low-income, Sierra Vista's rated at more at having a severe cost burden, more than 50% having a severe cost burden for housing. So according to the document that you gave us before, and And that those hardest hit are in the lowest income are the hardest hit by this cost burden of the housing naturally, right? And they're at the most imminent risk of homelessness. So, and it rated at that lack of affordable housing for renters is the principal risk to housing instability to Sierra Vista. So I just would hope that in the future, I know that there's not an easy solution to just, put out, but I hope to see us maybe combine those two or find a way to utilize the two, because CDBG funding is meant to be geared towards affordable housing, and we aren't using it that way.
When we get to the CDGB discussion, one of the things I want to do is, I appreciate that Matt's presented the statistics on housing. My concern is, and I guess maybe this is one of the things about being here too long on the council, is that years ago we did a study with University of Arizona specifically looking at housing. And I know things change in 10 years. But the only thing that we were lacking was housing for people, for families, rental housing for families, low-income rental families that had 5 or more dependents in the family. And they were basically, if you do look at the statistics on how many folks those are, it basically came down to 2 families. And my concern is on the statistics is I hope we're not looking at statistics for the Sierra Vista Douglas metropolitan area, which was a fabrication, in my opinion, by the Office of management?
Well, it's HUD.
Well, it's HUD's, but I mean, that was established by a group out of the White House during the Obama administration. And of course, all the data comes from HUD. But if we're having our data commingled with Douglas's data, I can understand why there would be a drastic change in just a few number of years. But the key thing is we need to make sure we have the proper data that deals with Sierra Vista and that housing data. And so I would ask Matt to just go back and review that and making sure that it's not the Sierra Vista Douglas metropolitan area, but it is in fact the Sierra Vista data. If we can get clean data now, we may not be able. It was Office of Management Budget in the White House that created that animal. So I'm skeptical with the data we're being shown. That's all I'm saying. I want to get the right data so we can make the right decision.
Okay.
Yeah, this is, I think this is an area that we probably need to have the additional information that you're asking for, and then probably a work session around this, because I'm curious about where the IDA fits into this and where should there be, and I believe there is, additional need for housing in our community. Where do all the entities that are available to us, in addition to the ones you mentioned, how do they fit into this picture?
How we should all be playing nice together to meet the issue.
Is
Yeah.
supposed to be our kind of.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Calhoun, and IDA has been involved in,
Yes, I know.
Low to moderate income housing projects before, and I think it's just a matter of we need to be working more closely together with these various organizations. The other thing in the 10 years since we had that last study that the mayor referred to, we went through a recession. Housing prices in town actually fell, but unemployment also rose, in correlation to that. So people weren't able to take advantage of the more affordable prices, both in the housing market and the rental market. Now we're seeing the opposite impact, where the economy is getting better, housing prices are going up, unemployment is going down, but our income level's high enough to be able to afford the housing that is available in town, and we are seeing a crunch in our rental market as well right now. So there are some things that I think we can work on there.
And then we can have an open conversation about it.
Well, I think the first 2 goals under, or I guess action items under the goal is the best way to term. I think they address that really well as far as that. First, let's gather information and do some connecting with possible community partners and see where solutions can become from that discussion. So I think that that's a great first step to that. So I just wanted to bring in that several pages earlier, the CDBG thing is like that could be combined or brought together. Just an idea.
Good point.
Connection, yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion on the strategic planning implementation? Okay.
Just one other thing. As we read through it read it deeper, it's the best way to bring up concerns at a work session with that department, with you, Victoria, or you, Chuck. How, as we get deeper into, as I get deeper into it, obviously you've gotten deep into it, but
Got
we
my
need to do
highlighter and my Post-it notes.
your
Well,
notes.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Calhoun, clearly if you have, concerns or questions about individual items, please feel free to talk to one of us or the project leader that's identified in the
Okay.
implementation plan. If in those discussions we feel an individual item probably needs to be brought to a work session level, that would be appropriate as well.
Got it.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to item C on our agenda today, and this is the Arts and Humanities Commission recommendation regarding the West End Water Tower. And Chuck, I'm not sure who's presenting this item.
Oh.
Our chair lady, okay.
Let's get this way down. Hello? Oh, okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Rebecca DeLue, and I am the new Arts and Humanities Commission Chair. And the city recently issued an open solicitation call for artists to create a mural design on the water tank located on the southeast corner of Denman Avenue and Canyon Drive in our historic West End. I am excited to report that we had a total of 18 individual designs submitted by 13 incredible artists, with some artists actually submitting more than one design. All of the artists were invited to present their designs to the Arts and Humanities Commission at our meeting held on September 16th last week, and 7 artists presented their work to us. We also had 3 representatives from the West End Commission joining us, and they were an active part of the evaluation process. Each work of art was individually graded against a selection criteria, and the evaluation sheets were collected and tallied, which revealed the rankings. And the Arts and Humanities Commission revealed the results and voted unanimously to present the top 2 score earners of this to the Sierra Vista Council for consideration. Our number 1 ranking design with a score of 88.33 was by Pablo Alonso, who is here today, as well as we have our second ranked piece of art, which was a score of 87, provided by Carrie Olahe. All right, I did it. And their designs were included in your council packets for reference, and Pablo and Carrie were invited here to speak, and they are here today, and they would like to give you some short presentations on their designs, if you wouldn't mind. I'd like to start with Pablo, followed by Carrie. Pablo? And this is Pablo Alonso.
I'd like you to imagine 2 people coming across this for the first time at 40 foot tall. I believe that the design is mysterious and intriguing, that people would talk about it and find it fascinating, and that it's a mixture of imagination and reality, so that they would remember it. And I believe that it would affect people, and they would tell people, you got to see this mural, even from other places. 6 years ago, I left this community because I didn't have work. And I went to Tempe, Arizona. And I've been working as an artist there for 6 years. I still have family here. And in being up there in Tempe, I managed to travel quite a few different places. I even made it to Canada, Edmonton, New York, Florida, Dallas, Denver, California. And I've learned a lot by doing this, and I'm more excited by actually coming back here and doing this mural than any of the other places I visited, even though that was a tremendous thing that I did. I put my heart and soul into painting this and doing the best job I possibly can. I love this place, and I hope for your vote today. Thank you.
Thank you. We're not voting. We can't vote in a work session.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm going to pass out some stuff for you guys to take if you choose. They are all stickers that have been based off of my design. So I don't know how to hook it up to
Let's
this.
see if I can figure this out. There we go.
Good
There we
job.
go.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a very dark reproduction of the design that I did for the water tower mural. I'm also going to hold up one that'll show you kind of a little bit of a mock-up of how I had kind of put everything together. So what I was doing with this mural was kind of trying to create something whimsical and fun and exciting, just from the pure fact of it being hummingbirds, which are something that you're so used to seeing, so small and cute and dainty and larger than life, larger than a car, something that people can see from off in the distance and get super excited about. I want to see that closer. You can see that I love the detail. I do a lot, these are all digital reproductions, but as far as the painting goes, I do a lot of brush work. Something on this scale would be done with a spray gun as well as an airbrushing technique. As far as my experience goes, I graduated in 2012 with my BFA from the University of Arizona and moved here probably about 6 months after that. So I've been living here about 7 years now, but grew up coming here like once or twice a month, so I'm really familiar with the area. And when I was putting together a mural, I'm actually working on one right now for, it's at Veterans Memorial Park on the backside of the skate shop. So it's a really large southwestern sunset with coyote and everything in it. So when I do murals, it's like I want something bright, fun, eye-catching, something that the kids will have fun, Instagramming, something that's a little bit of a landmark and something really exciting. With this one in particular, I really wanted to take something that would normally be seen as maybe an eyesore, and almost like disguise it or camouflage it. And I feel like we have so many bright, blue, gorgeous skies here that I really wanted to kind of capture that and then just throw those big, awesome, detailed hummingbirds on top of it. I have plenty of designs, so I'd love to be considered in the future as well. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any. I have a pretty good team of people that I would be working with, both my assistant who does all like my social media promotion type stuff and then works on a per diem basis to help coordinate all the appropriate contractors and stuff, to make sure that projects of this scale are done, appropriately. I'm just going to show you one last thing real quick. So this is an actual photograph of a painting that I did. I just donated this on Sunday to the Tucson Musicians Museum as part of their annual fundraiser gala and everything, just so that you have an idea of what digital versus this is just brushwork because it's a canvas, but the quality of work basically. I really appreciate being considered, for the project. It's super large and therefore would be really fun to paint, I have some really, really awesome competition that beat me out by 1 point. So I will leave it over to you. Thank you guys so much. Yes,
Question for you.
of course.
Did you paint the sky behind that picture?
Yes.
Or is
So
is that a natural?
no. So the sky. So that basically the only stuff I've done is what you're seeing on the face of the water tower mural, basically. So the what was that?
Sky is really the real sky?
Behind the mural, yes, behind the mural, that's the sky. And then I just tried to match, my blues and stuff like that of the mock-up, with the natural sky so that it would kind of, blend in a little bit with the background.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple, if I may.
Of course.
One for you and then one for someone else in the room.
Yes.
You said you're currently working at a mural at the park.
Yes.
At Veterans Memorial. How long is that running for? How long do you have left on it?
So the hope was to finish it this week, but the weather got a little unfortunate. So my hope was actually to be finishing it tomorrow. It's probably at about like an 85% done state, but I need to come in with my airbrush to do kind of the smaller details and everything, kind of redefining everything, and then putting the skate shop name a little more plainly on it, a little more legible. But right now, most people think it's done already, so it's more than happy if anyone ever wants to check it out. It's on the back side, so facing the Martin Luther King, drive right there. But yeah, so hopefully not finished up this week, then the following one.
First, I'm gonna say both of them are gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
But I'd like to ask Adam a question if I can, if I'm allowed. If he's here still, if he wants to come up quick. I had an idea instead of. Is there a way from now until Thursday, say 2:00, to put this on our social media? Just the images of one of each, and let the people vote, whoever's on social media, and see it?
That was not part of the contract.
No.
We don't wanna do something that wasn't part of the contract, because if somebody is not selected, then they have grounds to take action against us.
Okay.
Yeah, so we set up the process.
That was a good answer. I'll defer to the mayor on that one.
That needs to be
Important, because the people see it.
Good job.
Well, the thing is, if we want to do that in a future process, we can certainly do that and then make sure that the contestants, before the contest starts, know that that's the case.
Tracking.
It may be unfair to some people where we change the rules at the last minute.
Tracking.
So we want to make sure we're fair to everybody.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Sorry, Adam.
Cool idea, though. Maybe next time, right? Anyone else have any questions for either Carrie or Alonso?
Can we have the
Do I see the other one again?
the 3D one? Yeah, we want to see it up here.
You just pass that around so
Actually,
we can look at it.
I've seen it, but
And there's no, they're just
Oh,
geometrical
yes.
shapes. There's no symbolism to the shapes.
Symbolism is up to you.
Up to us, that's what,
now
It's like a sunset, like the
that's what I was thinking.
Rosie,
It'll be cleaned up. This is just a mock-up. But finished version would be pristine. Painted with the highest quality paints.
one of our commissioners on the West End kind of summed it up well. I thought it was neat the way she described it as a phoenix rising, like it's a rebirth of the West End of town, like cleaning it up and giving it a new look. But if no one has questions, I did want to thank
Yeah, please comment, yeah.
thank you. Thank you so much to the artists that came here today to present. I'm so glad that the rest of the council, you pass this on. The rest of the council could see a little bit of what we got to see at the Arts and Humanities Commission, and I'm so thankful for all of the commissioners who participated in that, and the 7 artists that showed up and the 13 that submitted. And all the work that Lara put into her fingers were on fire, tallying up all those numbers so that we could have it, and a decision was made before we all left that night. And it could have...
Was that about 3 hours?
No, no. It felt like so much shorter.
It was so
But,
fun. It was fun.
Yeah, I think it could have went a lot worse if we didn't have good, good helpers. And I think we're lucky that we had such an array of really talented artists to choose from. And I just wanted to reiterate how thankful the artists took the time that they did. And I keep forgetting this is work session because I'm sitting up here, so I'm really meaning to talk to you guys too, and I keep looking this way. But and this is Rebecca. That was Rebecca's first meeting, and she did great. And now she's here presenting in front of us like it's not a thing. So good job, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got anything else for us?
Questions?
Okay, so the question is, how do we proceed? Unlike the comment from Mr. Alonso, we don't vote in work sessions. The vote will actually take place on Thursday evening at the council meeting where we're allowed by law to do that.
Right.
And I would ask each person here to take some time and consider both candidates, the top two, and we'll make a decision then on Thursday. Okay?
All right.
So again, thank you, sir, for being here. Ma'am, thank you for being here as well. And Madam Chairman, thank you very much.
And thank you, Mayor and City Council, for giving us this opportunity to expand public art in our community. It's a really big deal, and we're looking forward to doing more. Thank you.
And that's one of the concluding comments, I think, is people don't realize that we have like 15 or 16 murals and other things around the city, and they're in all parts of the city, and people tend to get used to seeing them there. And
I think a mural tour.
Yeah,
they
shouldn't be. And maybe we
packed
need to have a publicity, the art of Sierra Vista, because every place you go, whether it's in front of the Cove or the library or even on the water tower out at the animal control shelter, there's public art everywhere, even at the airport.
Yes.
So.
All right. Noted. Something to add to our agenda soon.
We need to update our art in public places pamphlet so people can go visit these places.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much,
thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you. Oh, where's it?
Mr. Mayor?
Sir.
We have an administrative issue here a little bit with the item coming before you then on Thursday, because normally resolutions are written in a way that there is a recommendation on a single course of action in the affirmative, and here you're choosing between two. So when you, whoever makes the motion will probably be making the motion, then we'll put both names in the resolution, but whoever makes the motion will probably need to
Put the names in parentheses in the resolution, and then
indicate a name at that point.
okay, and that's one of the reasons why we originally hoped that the
There would be one
committee would recommend one name.
It-
Okay.
Well,
If we come up with a better way, we'll share that with you before the meeting.
they did want to recommend one, and it's just the way that the RFI was written. We had to recommend.
Yeah, understand.
Yeah.
We'll correct that in the future.
Yes, we learned a lot this time around. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll
try to
have an
figure that
interesting discussion on Thursday, I'm sure. Okay, that being said, we'll go on to the item D, which is the executive report, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, pleased to present the executive report for this month. It's written, as you know, bi-monthly now, so some of the items actually, as I was going through it, are even dated at this point because a lot of them occurred in July. But I did want to point out a couple of things, at least on my portion of the report, and then you can ask questions of any of us as you see fit. But just this last week, we're pleased to report that the Bureau of Reclamation has closed out our grant agreement with them on the Environmental Operations Park. That's a very significant thing because even though the water was always the city's, under that agreement, it was pledged for usage as recharge in terms of benefiting the river. So that restriction is now lifted from the council. Obviously, we'll be continuing to recharge, but that puts that issue back on the forefront in terms of how that water is going to be used in the future. And it's probably premature to make any decisions on that until we know more about the outcome of the adjudication with the Bureau of Land Management. But We're pleased that's over with. That was a 20-year agreement that BOR is closing out a little bit early because they considered the project to be substantially complete. And then on the recycling front,
Back before you go there,
oh, yeah.
you didn't address, I know they financed part of the plant.
Yeah, they.
And is that the debt's been paid and there's no other debt as well?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. So that is all cleared out. And then on the recycling front, we're pleased to report that the voluntary recycling is going okay, but we have an issue with regards to cardboard. And cardboard is an item that is recyclable and does have some value, but it doesn't package and travel very well, meaning the weight, et cetera, doesn't really, pay for itself when it comes to taking it. So we're experiencing losses with regards to profitability of sending cardboard through our contractor for that. So staff is looking at that issue right now, and we'll come back to you if we have any, other issues or solutions with regards to cardboard. But right now, it's posing a little bit of a problem.
In the past, when we had issues with cardboard, they had to be wrapped, the corrugated board had to be pressed and wrapped and shipped out in a big block. And at that time, we actually had a machine that did that. And if I remember service me correctly, it was on its last legs, and we were able to get the county to take it. Is there any?
Well, actually, one of the options for us is to work with the county.
Well, that was my next question.
Cardboard, primarily to Mexico, I believe. So we're hoping that we can work with Mr. Haverty and divert the cardboard away from the current contractor to the county. So that's our hope. So hopefully by the next meeting, I'll have news for you on that.
Okay, good. Anything else?
No, and CCOM report is a little out of date already. National Park Service joined at the meeting prior, and then Palominas, as I reported, has also joined since then. So the enterprise continues to grow one agency at a time.
Okay, any questions from Mr. Bertucci on his part of the report?
I just have one second. Just to make sure I understand it correctly. So as more people join CCOM, the amount we as a city pay in go down, or because we're having to pay a higher portion at the moment?
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Gray, as long as we do not have to increase staffing or other costs, as we gain more members paying subscribers to CCOM, then the share originally borne by the city and the county to start up CCOM does go down. It's when we reach a call load where we have to add staffing that we wouldn't see as much savings. But for right now, we're not experiencing that. We're actually, in the process of getting staffed up, and that process is going fairly well at this point.
Okay, any other questions on the rest of the report?
I have.
Yes, ma'am.
quite a few, Laura, I just wanted to know if we have any preliminary numbers on Oktoberfest with Leisure and Library. I know on the events. That's not on here, obviously.
Councilmember Gray, Mayor Pro Tem Gray, my apologies.
Okay.
There is, we do have some numbers. I've 33,000 and change for the alcohol sales that are back right now. We are waiting on the final numbers for the carnival share, which we're expecting very good. Our operational cost was down, and Sister Cities Association did very, very well. They had the exclusivity for the brat sales, and that'll be a part of the Sister Cities Association agreement too. That will go back into foreign exchange program.
Very nice. And do we think the numbers were up?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
But they're pretty much in line. We did get a lot of rain on Saturday night, which kind of cleared out our big crowd, but the tent was a little bit bigger this year. We had more seats, so we're hoping that that'll be good. I'm expecting positivity, though.
Good, of course. Yes, we are. And I've heard only good things about it. So I have actually questions for several departments. Okay. And then I just wanted to say for our PIO department is congratulations on the 3 CMA awards that you received.
Yay.
That's awesome.
And also your 5-star reviews. That's really cool that we're getting those. That's great. And then my question was, I saw that relatively low viewership on the recycling education video. Do we budget boosting those videos or things so that more people are seeing them?
Mr. Mayor and Council, or Mayor Pro Tem Gray, my apologies.
It's okay.
We do obviously do a lot of Facebook advertising, and that includes Instagram advertising. We have not done that with that particular video. Our hope is to just push it organically for now, but that is something we're considering for the future.
Okay. Are we tying our Instagram and Facebook? Are they when they both? Because I actually don't do Instagram very much, but so when we're boosting on, are we tying it to Instagram and it's boosting there at the same time?
Yes. Long
Okay.
story short, we're actually emphasizing Instagram a lot more in our paid Facebook advertising.
Probably a smart thing.
And
yeah.
that is kind of following the trend in terms of more users going towards Instagram, but it also depends on the particular demographics we're looking at with whatever ad we're targeting.
Okay. I just don't. I think I'm not old. I'm not young enough to learn all the new ones, so we'll just stick with what I know. But thank you. And then I have a question for Matt on community development. Can you just talk a little bit more about the web app, Matt? That looked really interesting.
There are a few.
The one that's in the executive report.
Okay. Well, first of all, there's been an uptick in interest in doing multifamily development in Sierra Vista due to tightening inventory. And so when we meet with prospective developers, they want to know what is the existing base. So we inventoried all the apartment complexes, and you can view them by number of units just to see what the supply is by sub-area within Sierra Vista. So that was one tool. Another tool was, on occasion, we're asked about available special event space. And so we have a web app that displays all the transient lodging within Sierra Vista, as well as facilities that could accommodate small and large events, 50 people or more. And so there's a layer that people can view to see what is available in terms of space. Thirdly, we developed mapping for the Sky Island tour that's on October 5th, just to show people what the routes are that will be run that day.
And that one's on the Sky Island Tour website.
And that's on the Sky Island tour site.
Oh, I didn't know. That's why I'm saying it out loud, because I was like, how do you find this third one?
Right.
It's on their website.
But every day we're trying to, produce information that will lead to better, more informed decisions.
Absolutely. So then my follow-up question, Matt, is on the multifamily housing, showing how many units are available. Are we showing vacancies as well, or just the number? Because that's pretty detailed.
Just the number.
Okay. All right.
I think the vacancy rate a few years ago was running at 15%, but now I think it's below 10%. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, rentals are becoming an issue. And then, you want me to, lastly?
You still have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm not used to getting to talk so much. Okay. So this is for Tony. I have some questions for you. On the OEA grant, we did get the report back from Sun Corridor, and they, gave us a lot of the numbers and everything. What I would like for you to do, please, is just to clarify the cost to the city. There seems to be some confusion, as evidenced in the Herald, that if you could just go on record showing us what we actually spent and where the money was spent.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Gray, I can go, I'll go through the top end and then we can go as far as we want to go. Okay, so the totality or the grant budget was $721,399. Now, the key elements to that are it was both the technical assistance program as well as the airport study. So as of June, as of 30 June, we're still compiling July, August, and September to finalize the contract. The actual expenditures were $485,251 were the federal expenditures, so Department of Defense money. The non-grant or non-federal money was $51,027. Now, that came from the city. Not to get into all the details, realize 90% of that is actually staff time.
In kind.
So in kind, 4 employees, and then the actual cash contribution was 5,103. So the 2 grants, or the grant total, the 2 contracts, one was to the tune of 160,000 to Donahoe and Associates for the airport study, and the second one to Sun Quarter was $279,000.
Okay.
Not the $90,000 that was reported in there.
The 900.
900.
Right.
900.
And the other thing I will add is, from the grants perspective, again, that budget of 721, we will return, or I guess not expend, $106,000 of the grant. And really that came back to how we use the grant, attempting to be frugal with tax dollars and not to just spend it. So I've already indicated, so that's a little over 15% of the total grant budget will not be expended, and I've let OEA know, actually pretty much for the last year, that we would not be spending that money.
So that will go back to them in the form of being able to use for another grant or however they choose, right?
Right, because it's a reimbursement process, it effectively stays in the federal government as far as their funding goes.
Can I make a recommendation on that information, that we either release that as a press release or a letter to the editor from the mayor or Mayor Pro Tem or something like that?
Well-
Because the false information's already been put out.
This is a delicate situation when you're talking, dealing with the editorial board, because basically anybody can can write their opinion about anything.
Yeah.
The concern that we should have, and this is what I hope to be able to discuss on appointment, which I haven't made yet with the editor, is that everybody is entitled to their own opinion, certainly can publish their own opinion, but when the facts are basically wrong, it's somebody who, at the paper, who should be responsible for the editorials to make sure that the opinions are based on the real facts, not something that is guessed at. I don't know whether it was guessed at or whether it was a personal opinion or what. But the bottom line is, I've had this conversation with the current editor at least on one occasion in the past on another issue. I'm willing to sit down on behalf of the city to go and say, okay, and in fact, Tony's already given me a list of accurate information that I needed, and I haven't gone through the actual editorial yet and go line by line and say these things are wrong, but that's the kind of conversation I need to have with the paper, the editor of the paper. If we don't get a fair break, I need to obviously go talk to her superiors as well, but you need to realize that the ink is theirs to use, and they can use it however they want to use it, and that's freedom of the press, which is a good thing. But again, we need to ask them to be accurate. Mm-hmm. And they obviously, in the editorial, there were a number of inaccuracies based on real facts, and they had the same documents that were presented by Sun Corridor when that item was printed. So I'll be working on that, and I'll give you a report back on what I see as a success or futile attempt, whichever it may be, with the editor of the paper.
Well, they own the ink, but we also have our own
Well,
communication methods.
I understand, and
too,
we can certainly
to
do
the
that, and that's one of the reasons why I think the Mayor Pro Tem asks the question tonight, is so that it's basically the numbers are out there now in the public, and the report is public too, so they can look at the report. Mm-hmm. If they just wanted the facts. But again, opinion should be based on facts.
Yep.
Not personal preferences. That's just my opinion.
And you're the mayor, so.
Well, and I agree with them.
And we're still gonna work with the paper as best we can. Even, because we will have rough spots in the future, and we'll have smooth spots in the future. For example, I think they came back on, what was it recently, where they backtracked on something on CCOM.
Yeah.
They realized they didn't have the facts in the editorial, and they backtracked. So that tells me they want to do the right thing. So I don't see coming down with a heavy hammer anyway on the paper, unless we're consistent, unless it's consistently adversarial. And that's an issue, that's an area we don't want to get into.
No.
We don't want to go there.
And I think it's fair to say that in communication, there's always going to be confusion.
Miscommunication.
Yes, as evidenced in my house in 23 years of marriage. So it happens.
It happens.
It happens. And as long as we can correct, Tony, I'm not finished with you though.
Let's go on to something else about the report.
Yeah, no. This is good stuff. It's all good stuff. I just wanted, and you're right, Mayor, I did want that to get out into the public. I thought that was important. I just also wanted to say that the ACA video featuring our mayor was excellent and a great representation of our city. And I know you don't like talking about stuff you've done,
And I
but
still
you did a
can't
fantastic
I still
job.
can't access it, Tony, so I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know what they're
Well,
talking
I will come
on
over and
Facebook.
make sure the
It's
link
on
is working
YouTube,
for
too.
you.
about. Well,
It is.
my
Facebook.
computer was blocked from
Be unblocked now, Mayor.
Well, it was fantastic, and your enthusiasm and love for the city, I thought, shined through very much. So, and then Tony, just on the housing market, I see in this report, I like what I'm seeing. So, can you do an overview of it, right quick?
I
Just for-
can. So for the record, we're actually pulling data from Long Realty, so I want to give credit where credit is due. But we've been working with them and looking at their reports probably the last year, just to give us some indication. And August fit just like we had looked probably the last 6 to 9 months. So just a quick overview, months of inventory was down to 2.6 months over 3.3 the year before. So there's homes, quite frankly, are moving much quicker and the inventory is significantly lower. The actual median price was up a little over 12% over year to date from August of 18 to August of 19. There were a little over 1,200 closings, again, a 4% increase over 2018. And inventory was down, again, in August, again, because houses are moving very quickly. So if I remember the report from Total, houses across the board were by and large in the sellers. The seller's market minus, I want to say it was over $500,000. But really, the market has continued to move. And I think that's what's driving, again, the single-family building and construction that's there. Matt mentioned earlier, and we've talked to them, again, multifamily is full and continues to be there. So we've seen a significant move in the population. Chuck mentioned that at the Spotlight Breakfast. Those are the things that we've looked at from an economic development perspective. So again, those elements are very positive, and again, those construction and new housing permits this year will be significantly different than we've seen in quite some time.
Right, and that would be my other comment is that I don't have the page number, but our housing permits are pretty far up, aren't they? Matt, I'm sorry that I don't have the page. Which
On a
is-
percentage basis, in real numbers,
Well,
it's
yeah,
up, you know, yeah.
Yes, but percentage basis.
But there is, activity on the plating front where, developers, pre-approved subdivisions are near completion and they're looking to develop new land
Right.
for housing.
So, actual numbers were 14 more than we were last year, so, and seems like I can remember years when even 58 was the whole year, so I think that's a good improvement. So that's all. Overall, I think our economy is doing really well and happy to see the staff working together to help boost it even more. So thank you, guys.
Anybody on this side?
Good night.
I had something for Tony, too.
All right, I'm going to bring a seat.
We're gonna do late. Okay, I was gonna say we'll do ladies first, because I know he's a gentleman, but that's okay. If you want to defer, that's fine.
The term of the grant, the term of the contract work to Suncorridor, how many years?
It was initially a year. We've actually extended it out to August. Quite frankly, the procurement process took time. So it was roughly 18 months of engagement. That included all the advertising and public engagement, literally up through the presentation of the final report, all 113 pages.
Thank you, sir.
Ma'am? My question is about the airport trip that was taken, and just trying to understand what's the aim or the goal is with, is it like you want to bring in a UAS this operation into the Sierra Vista Airport side or the Libby side? Is it commercial, military, contracting?
Well, I'll give you the 4 objectives, and I apologize. The 2-page trip report's been through the city manager and the mayor. I've got to get it to you, so there'll be a little more detail. But we went to North Dakota with four purposes or 4 objectives. Number 1, identify the potential for a large UAS commercial operation at the Sierra Vista Municipal Airport. Number 2, ensure any use would be compatible with Libby Army Airfield and their operations. Number 3, identify any issues preventing access to radar feed at Libby Army Airfield, supporting technology for beyond visual line of sight operations. Short answer is, without that technology operating beyond visual line of sight, aka I can no longer see my unmanned system, if the Army will not allow us access to their radar or will not share, then there is no potential to pursue that operation. They've done that in North Dakota, and that was key of bringing the Libby Army Airfield manager with us so that she could see it, get comfortable with it, and understand how they're doing it in North Dakota. We also went to the Air Force side, and she met her counterpart. So we sat down and looked at how the Air Force is doing operations and how commercial are doing. And then the fourth objective for the trip was to secure a partnership with Libby Army Airfield personnel as they control airport operations, airspace management, and air traffic control impacting the Sierra Vista Municipal Airport. And again, that's why it was important to bring the airfield manager. You can read about it and think about it, but to see it and talk to the people that integrate it on a daily basis. So quite frankly, this is the culmination of about 2 years of work with the Fort Huachuca personnel and the folks to ensure that we are working towards a compatible primarily commercial operations on the municipal side airport that would fit into the Libby operations while also providing primary jobs to the local community. So that's kind of the one over the world. I've got some additions to include an assessment of Grand Sky Airport on one. To really change Sierra Vista and potentially all of southern Arizona. So that's kind of the.
And I would tell you, having read Tony's report, that was the key in my mind was if we have buy-in from the post that things are possible out there, which I think we do have now. The question then is, we need to get together and say, okay, if we're going to pursue this, what are the next steps? What are the costs associated with? Who else do we need to talk to? Whether it's the governor's office, whether it's the universities, whether it's a congressional delegation, et cetera. But we need to sit down and kind of game plan what the next steps are, and then come back to the council and say, here's what we think we need to do. Is this worth pursuing? And we make a policy decision on that. So that's kind of where we are. We're still in the weeds. But we got a lot of things we need to develop yet.
Okay. Well, I was glad to see that you brought Fort personnel, because it seems like they have been a little bit of a brick wall that we've hit against with any attempt at development out there.
Well, having lived on both sides of the fence line, I would say it's really a lack of understanding. And really the opportunity to take the airfield manager to a commercial UAS event that she's never been able to attend, and yet we've been integrating manned and unmanned aircraft to a level here that's unmatched.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to look at how they described North Dakota and the lack of density, and compared to what Libby Army Airfield manages on a daily basis is exponentially more complicated. So again, the relationships that we've been able to cultivate, I think are really starting to pay dividends and set conditions. And again, it's attempting to use both sides of the airport to really maximize the capability. And we can't discount 12,001 feet. there's many, many airstrips at 4,000 and 5,000 feet across the United States, which is why the word is large. Large manned aircraft or large unmanned aircraft. And really, I think that's the sweet spot, having looked at this for a couple of years now, that I think we've got tremendous potential to actually work through and develop.
Did they address time, like the competition for runway time?
Well, it all depends on who you talk to. And again, I would just refer you back to living on both sides of it. And I've sat in the tower and watched people that complained. So I
That
can't
might complain
articulate.
regardless.
Well, I think we've worked a pretty interesting system. I'd compliment the air traffic controllers in the unique capabilities to mix aircraft. And at the end of the day, I think everybody wants more. I think it's just, that's kind of the reality of it. So how do we do it? And again, we've got to find something that is relatively low density because of that challenge, which is why we were looking at large airframes. So to give you something that I'm not going to look for, it's an aviation school where you're putting young, inexperienced pilots up and you've got to turn them through patterns. That is incongruent with Fort Huachuca's mission. So that's why we're very logical about where we're trying to identify the potential, both manned or unmanned. And quite frankly, other organizations are working on the small to medium-sized UAS in the county, and I think they've got tremendous potential to do that.
DBI has got
Right.
that.
And I think that will complement itself really across the county.
She's up in Benson, she's doing that, but it's in Benson, not at Douglas. We're talking small ones.
I think that's all.
Okay.
I had on the
Sir,
report.
you done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else on the report? Executive report? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony,
Thank you,
appreciate
Tony.
that. Item E is recent trips, future meetings. Reports, anything on that item? Went to Cabo, okay.
Yes, tell us about that.
How's it going? Okay, then we'll go on to boards and commission liaison updates. Anything from the board and commission liaisons?
I think Rebecca did mine already, so-
Yeah, Rebecca did a good job.
and she's cut.
We had
I
open
wanna-
cost diversity commission, if anybody's interested.
Okay.
Same with you.
There are people interested. We'll talk. We'll talk. And I want to thank Sarah for attending for me, attending the Cody meeting. I appreciate that. I'd like us to do that more, if possible.
Well, there's
Help
nothing,
each other
there's
out.
nothing, there's nothing wrong with you double teaming a meeting once in a while. I mean, as long as you don't have four there, you're okay.
Yeah, well, she went for me, though. I wasn't even there, but thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I have a couple pages of notes and then, I'm a note taker. That's
Yeah.
what I do. But had a follow-up conversation with Victoria on that. And so we'll give a report out to the commission on actions
What's
taken
happening? Yep.
this past week.
Mayor Pro
No,
Tem.
I was just gonna say on P and Z, they're going through, Matt, can you talk about the work program? Because you'll talk about it better than me with what they're working on currently with the development codes. Accessory dwelling in it.
Right,
civic one.
yeah. There are three bundles, and the first bundle is like non-controversial, just housekeeping type cleanup items, removing redundancies, clarifying provisions. The second set will involve revisiting the performance standards for accessory dwelling units and potentially amending the code to allow those permitted by right, administrative approval versus conditional use permit. The Planning and Zoning Commission did request that there be neighbor notification, similar to like administrative setback, where they could appeal, a decision by the Planning and Zoning administrator on those applications. Thirdly, we're going to be revisiting the city's subdivision regulations. I think I mentioned to you before, we don't have provisions on minor land divisions. And so we'll be adding those into that article, as well as, revisiting the application requirements and the review procedures. We're also going to be looking at the access management standards in the code in connection with the amendments we made to the traffic circulation plan. They wanted to take another look at like separation requirements, as well as potentially, you know, the adopted cross sections for the different hierarchy of streets. I think that covers everything.
That's all I can remember. So quite a
Yeah.
few things, and I would just say that I would encourage the new council members, and Councilmember Humphrey attends quite often, but it's good to hear their perspective and how they work through that whole process. And kind of unless you sit there and can be there again, not having four there, like the mayor said, but it is good to hear them talk through and how they come to get to their recommendations about codes and ordinances, things like that within the city. So it's pretty interesting stuff if you like that kind of stuff. It's very boring if you don't, but I happen to think it's fascinating. So
I do
thank you,
too.
Matt.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. Anything else on board and commission liaison updates? Seeing none, we'll go on to future discussion items and council requests. Have we got anything scheduled for future work sessions? Start with that.
What I've got on the list right now, Mr. Mayor, is the discussion on board and commissions, which will be on the work session for the second meeting in October. And then council also requested to review the the council handbook, which will go on in November.
Okay. Any other items? Okay, seeing nothing else on the schedule. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your attendance. Meeting's adjourned.